is in the house, and we'll also have a conversation about civil liability on the water. And we have two representatives of Transport Canada who are with us as well. We'll move into breakout sessions. You'll have an opportunity to hear from each other, talk to each other. We'll provide some technology instructions, not to worry as we go into those breakouts. Everyone will be pre-assigned into small groups for discussion, and there will be a group leader who will be there with some sample questions to discuss. As I mentioned, please do use the chat function to say hello and provide comments, share links with things that you think folks should be aware of. And if you have questions during the session and want to direct those to any of the speakers, please put them in the chat and they will be forwarded to me, and I will convey them to the speaker as we have time available. Possibly most important, and you can unshare now, Lauren, thank you. Possibly most important, please do stay on mute during the session. It really helps with the audio quality. And please do stay for the lunch that we will be providing after the session. And the washrooms are downstairs by the cloak. Oh, last year's notes, sorry about that. We'll move into the agenda now, and our first speaker is our brand new chair of Safe Quiet Lakes, Diana Paquette, and Diana was a leader in the tech sector in Canada for about 25 years, and she and her family are longtime cottagers and boaters in Muskoka. So over to you, Diana.
Thank you. Thank you so much, and good morning, everybody. It's a little bit of a different stakeholders for us this year, but we're so happy and excited and thankful that you're joining us on this new platform. Our mission continues to be to make the Muskoka Lake safer and quieter to ensure the sustainable enjoyment of a shared resource. And the momentum this year has been building more and more. Our action plan continues to be focused around three key pillars: outreach and education, advocacy, and building partnerships. This past year, around outreach and education, we've had a lot of very exciting things. Probably the most key and probably the most visible around Muskoka has been our new Wakes and Speed project, where we are testing buoys and signs to see if the use of those have an effect in reducing speeds and wakes in especially smaller waterways. And we will hear more about that and the progress on that project from Colleen a little bit later in the agenda. We've also held for the first time some public webinars. We were not able to meet in person on the dock and at marinas this year, so we took an alternative measure and have had great success with it. We held our first public webinar with Muskoka Lake Association. We had 165 people attend that, and we had so many questions arising from that we followed up with a second webinar in August and attracted 220 people to that webinar. So very excited to see. And as a matter of fact, that topic was specifically around signs and buoys, and we had Transport Canada join us, and they have joined us again today to give us more details, more specific to this audience. We have also continued to have multiple presentations to municipalities across the region, talking about our initiatives and seeing how we can be helpful to them and increase our partnerships with those lakes. And we've continued to have our boaters code at marinas. The OPP gave out, I think, 377 of our swimmer cards in the Wakes and Speed project site. So we continue with outreach and education, knowing that that's just a key pillar in getting our message out to the community. Around our advocacy platforms, we have been focusing on building a national Decibel Coalition to bring legislative changes around boat decibel noise. And again, we'll have a very specific presentation on that with Rob later, and he will talk about our exciting progress this year. And in addition to that, it's really been around building partnerships, partnering with our key stakeholders to make sure that we reach our goals. And with that, you know, everybody in this room are part of that audience. So thank you so much for your continued support around that, and the feedback that you've given us, which continues to, you know, focus us in the areas that we know are most important to you. Greg had mentioned that, okay, this is next year, sorry, I was waiting for that next slide. So next year we will continue to roll out our projects. We will expand our education around signs and buoys. We think that there's a key area there where we can be of help to municipalities and lake associations. We will continue to build support for our coalition. And we've also got some very exciting new projects around promoting safe boating. And some of those are partnering with FOCA and with MLA, and some exciting things coming up. So we look forward to sharing that with you as we go on. So Greg did mention that we had an award for the first time this year, and I am very happy to virtually present this to John Bobley. It's a beautiful oar with our logo on it. And I think that John had wanted to say a few words with this award. So I pass it to you, John.
Thank you, Diana. I'm trusting that I have audio now. Thanks, Greg. I just wanted to thank the SQL board for this Share the Lakes award. I have to say I'm very proud, somewhat honored, and humbled to have been even considered worthy of this. And with your indulgence, I asked to just make a few brief comments. In the agenda today, as Greg showed, there's several forward-looking discussions coming up, and I submit a little bit as a challenge that consideration should also be given towards improving existing boater education on the lakes. The thesis for this is look back to help you find your future. In the late 1980s in Muskoka, there were two very serious boating accidents that caused injuries and deaths. One was on Lake Rosso in the daytime. A larger boat ran over a smaller boat, just didn't see the smaller boat in the sun. The second one was on Lake Joseph at night when a faster moving vessel ran up and over the stern of a slower moving vessel, just didn't see the larger, slower moving vessel in the dark. The second accident perhaps became the most significant because that led to a federal provincial task force on boat operator licensing. The remainder of that task force is the PCOC, the Pleasure Craft Operator Card that everybody should have when they're operating a boat today. Briefly, the challenge that I offer today is that we should be working to improve the basic boater education, and I submit we should also include on-the-water skills testing in providing any licensure. So I say, look back to help us find the future. We should revisit the 1990s task force rationale and see if we can build on that. And I submit that several of the recent boating incidents in Muskoka and elsewhere show very clearly that significant educational improvements and testing requirements are needed for boat operators. Separate testing should be conducted for daytime and separate for nighttime operations when visibility conditions are significantly different. And for consideration, I offer that the improved education and testing may become the track made good for having safer shared waterways, not only in Muskoka, but also all over Ontario and Canada. Again, my most sincere thanks to SQL for this Share the Lakes recognition. Thank you.
Thank you, John. And let me add my congratulations. John has been a forceful, positive presence in boating across our region for a long time, and we should all be grateful for that. And John, I would steer your attention to the chat where you're getting a lot of love right now from folks. So congratulations. Diana,
Well,
anything
I
else?
like it from Nancy.
Diana, anything else that you would like to add in closing?
That's it. Thank you, and congratulations again, John.
Thank you,
All
Diana.
right. That's great. Thanks, John. And I'm not sure how you are going to use that paddle, but use it in good health.
I think it'll be displayed.
Fair enough.
It'll go into the bragatorium.
Excellent, excellent. And again, I'll steer folks to the chat. A lot of people have said hello. Great to have you all with us this morning. We're now moving into the Decibel Coalition presentation that Diana mentioned, and leading this will be Rob Bosenworth. He's the project lead and a board member at Safe Quiet Lakes and a cottager on Lake Rosso. Rob.
Good morning, everyone. Very happy to be here and tell you about our Decibel Coalition. I'm going to give you some history. So on slide 1, I'll give you some history and perspective on the problem, describe the Decibel Coalition, what its objectives are, and how we will attain our goal to update and update on you on how our first year has gone. So the problem. This problem was well known. In the mid-1980s, the boat industry started to introduce more offerings of high-performance boats to the US market. The trend continued and into Canada with as engine technology and boat design advanced. As we all can attest to, performance boats are bigger, faster, more powerful, and in a few cases, extremely loud. As you can see from the empirical data that we have from our surveys, there's a lot of support for muffler laws and muffler enforcement. It's not just a problem in Muskoka, it's across Canada. We've been dealing with areas from BC to now New Brunswick. It is particularly evident though in the 3 largest markets, which are Ontario, Quebec, and BC. The small vessels regulation requires most boats to have a muffler, but the definition is weak and police agencies have stopped enforcing it because they've lost court cases. They are frustrated too. People call and complain, but they don't have any way to enforce the law. We need to get this changed. And the challenge, of course, is that the jurisdiction on the waterways in Canada, unlike in the US where it's at the state level, in Canada it's at the federal level. So we need to get the regulations changed in Ottawa. And to do that, we gotta show that there is concern, which we already know. We've been trying to educate the people in Muskoka on this for the last 9 years, I think it is. And we've got to have a national view on this. So the next chart. We started to build this coalition starting last November. We are very encouraged by the support of the National Marine Manufacturers Association, without which our chances in Ottawa would be greatly diminished. We must have industry on board. Our ask is quite straightforward. We want to enhance the current muffler regulation to include decibel limits on the amount of noise that a boat motor can make. Instead, that we also want to include a recognized measurement procedure. There are standard procedures recognized in North America, and so that the enforcement is effective and efficient and stands up in court. This will give the police the enforcement tools they need if and when they need it. We're not alone, we are alone rather, with the only country in North America and Europe that have just a muffler law, no limits. 27 states have decibel limits on the amount of noise they can make in the water. The standards are very consistent The EU also has standards, and they are essentially the same as in the US. So we want to bring Canada in line with the two largest pleasure boat markets in the world. When we have full depth and breadth of stakeholders as members in the coalition, then we will raise funds, hire a lobbyist in Ottawa, and work with Transport Canada to change the small vessel regulations. After that, we will have the pleasurable job of informing the boating community and the enforcement agencies across Canada. So how are we doing so far? Well, we already have 7 official members. Most of them are large and influential. And that includes the Georgian Bay Association, Muskoka Lakes Association, Big Rideau Lake Association, which is in Eastern Ontario. We have an organization called the Memphremagog Conservation in Quebec. We have the Thousand Island Area Ratepayers Association, Lake Joseph North and Mississippi Lake Association. Yes, we have another MLA, and they've all joined the coalition. We have gathered significant knowledge and shared that knowledge with many of our interested parties, particularly Lake Association. We know all about US legislation. We've learned about the science of sound and measurements, muffler systems and mitigation options. We've actually had direct outreach to some performance boaters, particularly down in Lake Muskoka. So we're working with them, and they are modifying the way they drive their boats every Sunday morning. We know the history of the Small Vessel Act, so that we know it can be changed. You can see we've developed a logo. We've got a lobbyist identified in Ottawa. We've purchased a decibel meter, and we've done measurements of sounds and created a report on boats making noise. So let me wrap up here. We know what is needed: enhanced existing legislation to include decibel limits and efficient, effective enforcement procedures. The path to success is straightforward. National breadth with stakeholder depth, lake association, law enforcement, boat manufacturing industry, and boat sales and service industry. Interest is growing. We are national in scope, and at the moment we go from BC to New Brunswick, the people we are talking to. We really mean business, and we believe the time is now. We want to make all of our shared waterways quieter and more enjoyable for all of us. And I thank you for listening. For those who are with lake associations and want more information, please don't hesitate to contact me either directly or through Lauren at Safe Quiet Lakes. Thank you very much. Back to you, Greg.
That's great, Rob. Just before you go, I know that you are willing to talk to almost any group. Tell us about some of the sessions that you've held, and are you willing to do a dedicated Zoom call for people who are interested in the coalition?
Very much, Greg. We have a number or a couple of presentations. I've got a short presentation, a long presentation. We encourage any lake association from across Canada that is interested in learning more and becoming part of our coalition to get in touch with me, and I will at pretty much any time do a Zoom call with their boards or their full lake associations, whatever works the best for them.
All right, that's great. And Rob, I think I'm going to have to steer you to the chat because your contact information is being requested there. Someone wants that presentation. And there are also a couple of good questions being posed and good dialogue going on in the chat. So please check that out. Next up, we're going to move from the noise question to wakes and speed, and leading that project for Safe Quiet Lakes is another of our board members, Colleen Kennedy, who is a cottager and boater on Mirror Lake. Colleen.
Good morning, everyone. It's wonderful to be here. I joined the board last spring and marvel at all the things we've been able to accomplish in just 1 year with the help of the amazing board, Lauren Cochran, our friends at the MLA, the township, and the dedicated volunteers across the region that I've been able to meet. Some of our plans were disrupted by the pandemic, but as you all are aware, safe boating efforts are more important now than ever. And here's some of the highlights of what we did. As Greg mentioned, and Diana, we undertook a pilot project in the Indian River and Mirror Lake, going from Lake Rosso through Port Carling over to Lake Muskoka. And what we did was we're trying to understand how to improve boating behavior, as John mentioned, looking to the past and trying to resuscitate some of the signage and buoys that were brought out in the 80s and 90s that have gone missing or broken or been need to be replaced. We did a survey last fall to see and gauge people's ideas and thoughts on what was going on the boating behavior on the region. And we got pretty much unanimous feedback that people were concerned about wakes, concerned about speeds, and the effects on both of those, on swimming, on all the other usage of the boat, and the environmental impacts. So we really wanted to try and remind people of the local VOR, which I know we'll be talking about more, of 9 kilometers, 30 meters from shore, vessels and docks, which is quite interesting for this region. But of course, the 30 meters from shore is pretty consistent throughout the Muskoka lakes, and then the 10 kilometers through many of your lakes. And so we felt that we needed to use 9 kilometer signs, which the township and Phil Harding kindly were able to give to us, as well as working with the OPP to make sure that our messaging is consistent with what they were doing. And the MLA was also, I'll go into some of the tactics. So we also wanted to engage in public outreach, which was hard to do over the summer. But I'll go through some of the results that we had on the next slide. So we were able to get the township, we distributed 25 new 9 kilometer signs throughout the region. We also developed a no wake sign. As you can see, we tried to appeal to people's sense of the environment. Thanks to Pat Pape and her team for designing this beautiful sign. This is my home, no wake. Well, we went through a lot of different designs and we'll continue to test, but this seems to be working a little bit as people stop at least and slow down to see the beauty and what the messaging is. We have had some great coverage in the Cottage Life and Muskoka region news about what we are trying to do. And our friends, of course, at the OPP came and helped us put up, thank you, Dave Moffat, the radar sign that the MLA was kind enough to put in the Foreman Narrows for us. And Lawton Osler and Penny Middleton at the MLA have been trying to work it out. We finally got all the technology working this summer, and we look forward to getting the data to see what kind of speeds people were going through at the Narrows and how if we made a bit of a difference. So we've had great feedback. There's been people from across the region. I'm worried that we might not have been able to change the boating behavior too much, but we do know that some of the results, we placed a few buoys in the region, and where the buoys have been placed really did have a substantial effect on where people were speeding up and taking off, and the wakes were quite large at that time, and when we know that we have made a big difference with the buoys. So there's been some great success, but there's also been some concerns of the volume of boating, and a lot of people have come concerned about personal watercrafts. And I have had feedback from across the region asking for the signs, so much so that the MLA purchased 50 signs and distributed them, and Katie Edwards is still asking for more. So we know that there is great appetite in the region and beyond to help educate boaters, as more and more people are taking to the waters and perhaps don't know the rules of the road or the waterway, as it were. So I really appreciate the board and everyone in the township and the MLA's support on this, and I hope that next summer we hope to make it even bigger with direct PR and some social media and some videos, and we can only make it bigger. And John, we will look to the past at some of the tactics that I know that have been taken, and we continue to forge ahead with the future with the new tools that we have to reach people, to help change behaviors, to help our lakes. So thanks so much, everyone, for the time, and have a great fall.
Hey, Colleen, that's great. There's a question for you in the chat about availability of the signs, and there's also a good question. How the heck does anybody know what 9 kilometers looks like? Interesting dialogue there. Can you fast walking speed? Thank you, John, for giving that answer. What does 9 kilometers an hour look like? The partnership with the township, Colleen, you mentioned that. Maybe say a little bit more about how that's working, because we have a number of councillors and folks from around the region in government.
Well, I certainly, I'm due for a call to regroup with Phil to tell him how things were going, but I presented at the Township of Muskoka Lakes, where the region that we were trying to test was, and they were wholeheartedly supportive of what we were doing. And Dawn and we'll talk a little bit later about how the township is responsible for reminding boaters and the signage around Vors. And they kindly produced some new 9 kilometer signs for us that I distributed and have been in the region. They were keen to help us on social, and I know that they were going to come out to any events that we had in the hope, but we'll have to do that next year. But I'm going to continue to work with the township, and I know they were, all the councillors were incredibly supportive and keen to help us make this initiative a success.
That's great. Thank you very much, Colleen. And again, there's lots of energy in the chat and requests for your contact information as well. So we're going to move on now, and as I mentioned, the OPP is in the house. We have Sergeant Dave Moffat with us, and Dave is the Provincial Marine Coordinator of the Highway Safety Division for the OPP, and a champion for safe and respectful boating. Dave.
Thank you, Greg, and thank you to the SQL for allowing me to speak today. As Greg said, I am the Provincial Marine Coordinator. I've been doing this job for a couple of years now. Marine policing is true and dear to my heart. I've been a Marine officer since 2000, a Marine instructor since 2001. So I know my way around the Canada Shipping Act, and this job is especially it's a great job because I get to speak to people like SQL and excuse me, FOCA, and talk to Transport Canada, etc. So learning lots every day. So we'll just go through this. So the OPP this year had a bit of a challenging season. Early in the spring in the southwest, we had an early spring. The snow melted. We had our first fatal boating mishap in Lake Erie in March, where an employee on a fishing vessel fell off the back of the vessel, not wearing a PFD. So that was really getting kicked into this into our boating season. Then COVID-19, the restrictions with the ramps, that was a very difficult time for us because the phone calls that I was getting every day about why is this ramp closed and this ramp isn't closed was really difficult. So we had to almost police the ramps a bit, sending people from detachments to explain issues regarding it's not really an OPP issue, it's a municipality issue. With that in mind, everybody was stuck in home and not being as social. We found the unbelievable increase in boat sales. Just on Lake Muskoka alone, it was record sales for some of the marinas. And due to that, we had an increased number of people on the lake. With that in mind, they all come back to the same old thing about the complaints. We had way more PWC complaints. We had lots and lots of complaints about people that just didn't understand how to operate the vessel and to operate it safely. So I listened to John Bowlby's comments about the PCOC, and we have it's something that is in the regulations right now, and hopefully in the future we'll be able to make things a little better. So one of our roles this year was the education piece. When it came to COVID-19 and the social distancing, etc., people needed to get on the lakes and do some fishing just for the mental health. So we were trying to really educate the public regarding the safe practice of COVID-19, but also the safe practice of vessel operations. And with that in mind, with the education of the public, we were also educating our own officers a ton about the Canada Shipping Act and commercial vessel enforcement, etc. One thing we really hit off pretty hard this year was the social media education. We got corporate communications involved down in, I am down in Aurelia at General Headquarters. So we got our corporate communications involved, but every region in the province has their own safety messaging piece that puts on their own Twitter account, own Facebook account. So we really hit the social media up pretty quickly. So this is our marine season in a nutshell. What it says there is we had fatal occurrences 20, fatalities 21. I'm sorry to say that we have to add another 3 to that. We have one that I'm sure you heard about, the drowning in the Muskoka River up by the Bracebridge Falls. That's not included in there. And then we've had 2 this week. One over in Magwin Highlands, and we're still currently looking for a male that is lost in Lake Erie. So we're at 24 fatalities, which is a high rate, unfortunately. So we keep all the track of all the stats. We talk about the boat sizes. We talk about the age, the day of the week, the time of the day, alcohol, safety equipment. We do the whole gamut, and we're trying to find any kind of correlation between all the fatalities over the years. We've had stats from, well, probably 13 years now, I believe. So those diagrams there, you can see that the age of the deceased are, it's not the people that are 18 years and under. We do have a few. We've had some horrific occurrences in the province this year involving some young children. But you can see that we're looking at ages anywhere from 64 down to 25. That's the kind of the age group that we're really trying to focus and try to explain to people the importance of PFD use and the importance of life jacket use on the water. Always the case, 90% of the, or way more percent of the victims are males instead of females. We've always said that, my wife reminds me every day that she's smarter than I am. So, but that's another thing. And the contributing factors, capsizing and falling overboard are the 2 biggest factors. And capsizing, we're not going to capsize a 24-foot vessel. We're going to capsize a canoe, a kayak, a 14-footer, etc. And falling overboard, people fishing that are not wearing PFDs, and the rate of people that are on our water that are not wearing PFDs and that cannot swim is staggering. So, and then the number 3 there, it says other, and that's just a couple occurrences throughout the province. And then the last comment is 30% of boating fatalities involve alcohol. This might surprise a lot of you, that people think that people are dying on the water because of alcohol use and drug use. And it's not the case. It's a very low percentage. And it's all about, with the next slide, Lauren, it's all about PFD use. And right now, it says PFD life jacket worn in 2 cases, no PFD or life jacket worn in 18 cases. A lot of those cases, well, I'm not going to say a lot, probably about half of those cases are boats that actually didn't have any safety equipment on board. But again, we have to add 3 more people to that no PFD usage. So we're at 24, okay? So unfortunately, this is the message that we need to push. And with SQL, MLA, all the cottage associations in our jurisdiction, we are trying to tell people that PFD use is the most important thing when you go out on the water. You can see in the last comment, it says, but I'm a good swimmer. I read these reports every day. I get notified of all these fatalities. And like I said, a lot of them are people that can't swim. But on the other hand, they, with the investigation they talk about how much this person swims. And, for instance, we had a gentleman on a stand-up paddleboard. He swims every day in his pool in his condo in Toronto. So he's a good swimmer. He fell off the board. For some reason, he panicked, and a lot of it has to do with water temperature or that gas reflex where you ingest some water. And he wasn't wearing a PFD at that time. So as he fell off the board kind of skirted away from him, and he started to panic. And the witness said, I saw him for a second, and then I didn't see him. So when people talk about their ability to swim, in my opinion, it's a moot point. So the social media messaging that we're doing here, I just want to take this is I think just over a minute or a minute and a half video, and we have done so much social media messaging in the past that we decided up in corporate, kind of the corporate position, that we have to have a bit of a strong message to the public. And this is something that went out on Twitter and Facebook, and I sent it out to all the regions, and we had over 10,000, 11,000 hits on this message. So go ahead, Lauren.
Dave, after that runs, we'll move into Q&A.
Okay. Oh, no volume?
But you're looking good.
No volume. Okay, so this message here basically was about interviewing our underwater search and recovery unit, which is in Gravenhurst, and these are the people that go to these lakes and waterways all over Toronto and retrieve these bodies. And one thing that our Kevin Gorman from the USRU stated was that the last thing he said is that I don't pull people off the bottom of the lake wearing life jackets. And that was a comment that just went through the Twitter quite abruptly.
Ouch.
Yeah. So, yeah. So,
is it okay, Dave, if we move into questions? I'm sorry that
sure.
That wasn't available, but perhaps you can put the link in the chat once we finished our conversation, and people can go and view it.
Sure. Okay. I was just talking about what we've done, but that is perfect. If you just want to open up that next slide, and people can read that.
Well, so that, I think that leads into one of the questions that we got, which is the presence that you have. Can you describe how much presence the OPP has on the big Muskoka lakes and elsewhere?
Well, I can tell you that the Bracebridge detachment is an excellent detachment when it comes to marine policing. They have a handful of dedicated officers that really know their way around the Canada Shipping Act. And my job is to educate them and to get them even better with the Canada Shipping Act. You can see our charges here. This is provincially. So when this presentation was put together, we have almost 46,000 vessel stops provincially. So we're trying to get that presence on the water. We're trying to, especially the Muskoka lakes, who have historically had a lot of presence on the water. That we want people to realize that, alcohol, there isn't a position on the lake where you should have alcohol, or you have to have the right number of life jackets, etc. The Muskoka Lakes has 3 vessels, 2 of our Boston whalers, 1 harbor craft where we do police the smaller lakes. And because of staffing, they really try to put someone out almost every day in the summertime if they can, and that involves day shifts and night shifts. I can't specifically speak about Bracebridge attachments, like as far as schedules go and how many times they actually got out, but I know they're very active.
Great, thank you. Another question that we got, Dave, and I'm not sure if you have additional slides here. Apologize if we're... So one of the other questions was, how can we help? How can we help, particularly in the sense of helping the OPP get more funding, because people value the programs and presence that you bring. So what can people be doing?
Well, I think for one, the SQL and the MLA do such an amazing job for their membership, and we have. I have taken actually a couple of pages from your book, your textbook, and I've let other cottage associations know that what you're doing, which is great. Now, as far as to help us, really all you really can do is lobby your government and to see if we can get more officers. Doug Ford has just, I'm thinking probably a month ago, there was a meeting here, a presentation where he said there's another 200 officers that are going to be able to be employed by the OPP in the near future, which is huge for us. Our staffing numbers are low right now. They're actually pretty ridiculous, but we are trying our best to do what we can do. And marine policing is a core function of the OPP, so that will never go away. But we, you know, we just need staffing, more and more staffing. Just go to the next slide, Lauren. One thing for us is that we want to make the Canada Shipping Act, the best act for marine policing, obviously, and we want the Ontario waters to be safe. So the strong partnerships that I have with you guys, with the Office of Boating Safety, with Dawn and Courtney, sitting on committees with national committees and regional committees, and speak to all you guys. And this is how we're learning what your issues are, and you're learning what our issues are. And that's the, you know, that the communication piece is probably the best thing for us.
All about the dialogue.
That's it.
Thanks, Dave. Well, I'm sorry, but we're going to have to move on, but Dave will be available. I think you're able to stay on the call. Is that right, Dave?
Yep, yep. And
Terrific.
then that last slide there has my contact information if you want it.
Okay. Also, there was a question in the chat about encouraging boat manufacturers to put PFDs on models in their ads, and I think there's someone from the National Marine Manufacturers Association who is on the call, so you might go in the chat and answer that question as well. And if you have questions for Dave, please put them in the chat. We will either forward them, or Dave can lean into the chat and provide an answer today. So moving on, we're going to talk about civil liability on the water. And we have with us Roger Oatley, who's a partner in Oatley Vigmans, the personal injury lawyers. And Roger is a national leader in this space. So Roger, over to you.
Thanks very much, Greg. The single point that I'm going to make with you is that legislation in this area needs an urgent overhaul. And let me tell you why. The first reason is that boating cases are potentially catastrophic. And I'll give you just a few examples of some of the cases that I have had in my career. I think the first one involved a young teenage lad who was water skiing behind a boat with no spotter. And the driver of the boat was young and inexperienced, and pulled the young lad very close to an old crib that was just below the water. The young water skier crashed into the crib at high speed and became a quadriplegic in a second. and would live that way for the rest of his life. The next case that came to mind as I was thinking about what to say today was a young woman with a family and a job that helped support those kids, who was swimming in Kempenfelt Bay. A boater ran over her. The prop so mangled her that she died. The next case, I think John Bowlby may have mentioned, was the Crompton disaster on Lake Joe, where my cottage is located, where, as John said, boaters decided in the wee hours of the morning to lay there in their boat looking at the stars. Another high-speed boat came out, the bow lifted, didn't see where they were. The boat came right up over top of them, killed one of Ken Crompton's sons, and brain injured the other one, who sat there with the brother who was dying in his arms as he died. I remember another case where a lovely young man had taken his nephew fishing in a tin fishing boat. They were sitting in a quiet bay and they heard a sea-doo getting noisier and noisier, and suddenly the sea-doo was coming straight at them, went right up over the fishing boat, killed the little boy, and gave the uncle, my client, a brain injury. Another case that came to mind took place on Georgian Bay, where at dusk a family in a sailboat was returning to harbor. Another high-speed boat coming from a bar not too far away crashed into the side of the boat. The little boy on board died. The wife suffered a brain injury. The boat sank. And later, when the police and salvage operators pulled the sailboat from the bottom, the lights were still on. And the last case I tried before I went into semi-retirement a few years ago was down in Picton, where a lovely, intelligent, fine, athletic young woman went for a swim, and nobody told her that she was swimming in an area frequented by boats. A boater was giving a lesson in wake surfing or wakeboarding, started with the boat up on an incline, didn't see the swimmer. The prop so mangled this woman that she lost all of her urinary organs, all of her vagina, her uterus, part of her intestine, part of her leg was ripped off. She lived with a colostomy and tremendous pain, and will live with that for the rest of her life. And these are the sorts of cases that I saw whenever there was a boating collision. Those cases are potentially catastrophic, and they occur too frequently. We have to remember that the speeds are out of control. That's one of the reasons for them. There are no seat belts in boats. There are no airbags in boats. There is almost no protection the way there is even in an automobile. But here are the problems. These cases, first of all, often require millions of dollars for care. When you hear about a case where someone's awarded several $million, it's not they're winning the lottery. This is all money to replace income and to care for these people who are so catastrophically injured that they need somebody to look after them. Yet, even though these cases involve so much money, there is a limitation imposed by the Canada Shipping Act and the Marine Liability Act of $1 million on a claim. That was surely a limitation that was imposed to assist shippers who are carrying large cargo, but yet it affects boaters. The limitation until about 6 or 7 years ago was $100,000. At least it's been increased to $1 million, but it's woefully inadequate. Next, the second point I want to make, and this will really surprise you, is that liability insurance is not mandatory in Ontario on boats. So somebody can purchase a so-called performance boat with 2 350s on the back, go screaming around the Muskoka Lakes or Georgian Bay or anywhere else without any insurance. So somebody gets hurt and there's nowhere to go because there's no liability insurance available. And the next thing that combines with that problem is there is an absence in boating of what lawyers call vicarious liability. And to put that very simply, the owner is not automatically responsible for the negligence of the operator of a vehicle if it's not the owner. For example, Greg, if you own a boat and you loan that boat to Nancy and she goes out and God forbid has an accident and it's her fault and somebody's badly injured, the badly injured people can sue Nancy, but they can't sue you. The only reason we can sue the owner of automobiles in Ontario when someone who has the automobile with the consent of the owner, the only reason we can sue the owner of an automobile in Ontario is that there's a specific provision in the Highway Traffic Act which creates that vicarious liability. Now that's a big deal because it relates to whether insurance is available. The only reason the operator of insurance of a boat in Ontario will have insurance is because the insurance policy usually covers the operator as well as the owner, but it doesn't always. In the Crompton case, for example, which John mentioned, they had specifically excluded the son who was operating the boat when that collision occurred. So there was no insurance available. Fortunately, with great integrity, the father of the man operating the boat was a wealthy person from South America, and he stepped up and he paid the claim personally. But that is a very, very rare thing. So what we need is an overhaul of insurance. We got to get rid of this ridiculous limitation. We got to have vicarious liability, and we have to have mandatory insurance so that every boat on our lakes is insured and every operator is insured. And I want to echo what John Bowlby said. Licensing in Ontario is a joke. It's a sham. And until that's corrected, we have no hope of having safety on our lakes. Somebody's probably wondering about the O'Leary case. I'm not involved in that. And in the 1 or 2 seconds I'll have left, I want to say that if the boat that was struck had its lights on, liability will probably go mostly to the O'Learys for not seeing the lights. But ask yourself, if you're a boater and you boat at night, how visible are the lights that we require on our boats? My cottage is on an island in the middle of Lake Joseph, and I boat a lot at night. I'm careful not to drink before I boat, but I find it extremely hard to notice the lights on boats and separate them from cottages behind them. I think we need a complete overhaul of boat safety and civil liability in Ontario, because at the moment there are huge gaps in it. Part of the problem is that the legislation is all over the place. Boating is a federal constitutional area under the British North America Act, yet the issues are common to provinces. So we have some provisions about lifting licenses in the Highway Traffic Act, impaired driving in the Criminal Code. Then the Canada Shipping Act and the Marine Liability Act talk about ships. They don't even mention small pleasure craft. So if there are government people listening, it's a priority. Somebody has to take boating safety serious and do something about it. Thanks, Greg.
Thank you, Roger, and you've given us a lot to think about in terms of reform for insurance, but also some fundamental ideas like lighting on boats at night. And I saw John Bowlby nodding. That's a question that we've gotten and an idea that I think needs more attention than it has gotten to date. And I'd encourage FOCA and the other associations to think hard about the ideas that you've brought forward today. Thanks for being with us, Roger.
My pleasure.
All right, next up, we have two representatives from Transport Canada. We've got Don Colhoun, who's the manager of the Office of Boating Safety for Transport Canada, located in Sarnia. And Courtney Bice, who's a navigation protection officer in the navigation protection program. And I think, Dawn, are you going to kick it off?
Yep, it's going to be me first, Greg.
Great.
As Greg mentioned, I'm Dawn Colhoun, and I'm the manager of the Office of Boating Safety. Before I start, I'm just going to talk about a few things that Francis wanted me to talk about, actually. So there are changes being made to a couple of our regulations. One is the pleasure craft licensing, and pleasure craft licensing refers to the numbers that go on your boat, not your operator card. And there's also going to be changes to the pleasure craft operator card legislation. So these at the moment are proposed amendments. So I cannot speak about still in the approval process. Once the minister approves it, it will go to public consultation, at which time you can all have your say. There will be a Let's Talk website by Transport Canada, which will be made available to the public. And presentations will be made at the upcoming Canadian Marine Advisory Council, the Recreational Boating Advisory Council meetings. Once consultations are held and comments received, we will publish these findings online in a What We Heard report. To communicate feedback to all of you. All feedback will be taken into consideration in developing the final regulatory package to be published in Gazette 1. So I just wanted to bring that to your attention, that these two regulations are undergoing changes. I'd like to address what Roger was talking about. When you have suggestions for changes to regulations, your best or your first step really is to attend a Canadian Marine Advisory Council meeting. This is open forum. The agenda is driven by the participants. So you can request items on the agenda. There's different breakout groups for recreational boating, commercial vessels, small commercial vessels. There's different things. And this year, meeting virtually. So it's free for everybody to attend. It doesn't cost you to even travel. So please do attend, drive the agenda right to the Secretariat of the CMAC item on the agenda and bring it to Transport Canada's attention. That is your first step, and I would really appreciate, you all have great suggestions. I was amazed listening to everybody's presentation. You've done great work. Definitely do attend CMAC, and CMAC is going to be staggered over 8 days apparently, just so that they can get these breakout groups fully functional and get everybody participating properly. So having said that, I'll get back to my presentation. So last year at the AGM, I spoke to you about the VOR process. So who applies for a vessel operation restriction, all the steps you have to go through to get one granted, and things like that. So now I'm going to talk about signage after a restriction is granted. So the first thing that a municipality is responsible for after a restriction is granted is to inform the public about the new restriction. So this can be through social media, newspapers, flyers, newsletters, whatever it takes. Secondly, they have to ensure that an enforcement regime is in place as described in their formal application to us. So enforcement is generally conducted by the police, the OPP, RCMP, municipal police. In some provinces, it's conservation officers, and in some areas, Parks Canada as well. And lastly, it's the municipality's responsibility to signage of the same. So we have a signage guide, and there's a picture up on the slide of the signage guide. You can contact our office and we can send you the signage guide electronically. You have to remember that vessel operation restriction signs are regulatory signs, and they must follow the regulatory prescribed format. Next slide, please. So there are 7 types of restrictions called schedules. So based on the restriction that applies in your waterway, you are going to create the sign, or the municipality is going to create the sign that applies to that restriction. So for example, if it's a speed restriction, you're going to have the orange circle with the speed limit in the middle of it. If it's a no boats allowed, all vessels prohibited restriction, you're going to have the diamond with the cross in the middle, and so on and so forth. So depending on the type of restriction, the signage is going to be created with one of those symbols. Next slide, please. So this is a couple of pages just out of our signage guide. You'll see it's very specific on the guidance that it gives you for what the signs should look like. So again, these are regulatory signs. They have to follow the regulation in the prescribed format. Now, some of you have asked questions in the past about the red and green official buoys. Those ones are put out by the Canadian Coast Guard. So if you have a question about those buoys, like one is drifted away or broken or whatever it happens to be, you must contact the Canadian Coast Guard Aids to Navigation. Another question that came up from my webinar that I did with SQL last month was, can a cottage association pay for and install the signage on behalf of the municipality? The short answer is yes. Yes, you can. However, the municipality is still going to be liable for that signage. So the municipality should be involved every step of the way, regardless of who's paying for the sign. So we suggest have a written agreement, the municipality and the cottage association or whichever organization it has volunteered to pay for the sign, write it up, be as to which board you are covering, where you're going to place this, how long you plan to keep maintaining this responsibility. Both parties sign it, the municipality as well as the association, and please send us a copy for our record in the township's file. Because if anything is wrong with that sign, if it breaks away, floats away, it's in the wrong place, it's not, it doesn't follow the prescribed format, we will still just go back to the municipality and ask them to fix it, basically. So the municipality should be involved every step of the way, and they can't just wash their hands off of it if the cottage association is willing to pay for it. So we find that there's a lot of these buoys popping up everywhere. It's not a legal buoy. So it's not legal because it's being made to look like a regulatory buoy, but it's not. It's just an information private buoy. So I just want to say that when it's in an orange circle like that, that's a control buoy, that's a regulatory sign, and it cannot be used here. If you are just providing information, it has to be an orange square. But here to talk about private buoys and the requirements for private buoys is my colleague, Courtney Bice. Courtney?
Thanks, Dawn. Hi, everybody. I'm Courtney Bice. I am a Navigation Protection Officer with the Navigation Protection Program, and I'm going to talk a little bit about buoys today. I'm going to talk a little bit about the regulations. First, there are private buoy regulations in Canada, and these regulations basically give the overlapping concept about what you can do with a buoy. So Transport Canada, we do not place buoys. The public, everybody has the right to place a buoy as long as they follow the regulations. So I've got all the regulations listed here. I'll grab the big ones here. You cannot place a buoy that will mislead or interfere with navigation of any kind. Do not place the buoy unless you've placed the correct type of buoy, unless all of the shape and size and identification requirements are met. When you place a private buoy, you need to select the right type of buoy. When you're placing the buoy, it needs to display the letters PRIV on both sides of the buoy, along with the name and the contact information for the person who's placing the buoy. The buoy needs to be installed in a proper way to ensure that it's not moving around, and it will keep the buoy in the right position. And basically understand if we determine that the buoy requires lighting or retroreflective material, that the Minister of Transport can request that you add additional things onto your buoy. And we would tell you those types of things, what color the light needs to be and so forth. I'm a fellow cottager, and I know that everybody knows what a JAVX jug means. I had never seen a compliant buoy until I started working for Transport Canada, but JAVX jugs are technically not a compliant buoy, and they could be removed if we felt that they were interfering with navigation. I've selected, these are not all of the buoys that we have, but I've selected some of the popular ones that I think would be applicable most to cottagers. This hazard buoy, so this is a white buoy. It's got a diamond in the middle, and this is the type of buoy that you should be selecting if you'd like to mark a rock or shoals. And you're going to use this buoy if you're wanting to mark an area where you think that you want to direct mariners to stay away. You can display words inside the diamond, so you can actually write rock or shoal. You also need to have the PRIV and the name and contact information if you are the one that's placing the buoy. The information buoy is this square. This is the type of buoy that you would want to use if you want to display words like slow or caution or swimming. We would suggest that this is the type of buoy that should be used rather than the no wake buoy that Dawn was just speaking about. This is a compliant buoy, and you can still, encourage boaters just to slow down. Maybe there's no VOR in the area, but there's a high level of swimming in the area. There's infants, or there's a summer camp. You can use this buoy to display words and try to encourage boaters just to slow down. This top one is a mooring buoy. This is considered a work under our legislation, which is called the Canadian Navigable Waters Act. And it may be subject to review and approval under the CNWA. So the reason why is because this buoy is not actually, it's not indicating any information to a mariner. It's actually for something else. So because you're going to be attaching a vessel to a mooring buoy, sometimes that vessel can be small, but sometimes it can be quite large. And that vessel mooring on that in that particular spot could be a hazard to navigation. And that's why it does require our approval. And in a swimming buoy, so swimming buoys can mark the perimeter of a swimming area. So if you'd like to have a little swimming area and you want to place swimming buoys, you are free to do so as long as they are not connected. So you have to mark the buoys the same way with the PRIV and the identification. If you are wanting to have a designated swimming area where the buoys are connected and you are trying to block vessels from entering the area, we do approve that, but it does require approval under our department. So here is, Lauren, is there one more slide there? Sorry. Oh, okay. Well, I'm going to speak about one more thing. We wanted to talk a little bit about, and this is something Francis had brought up, and it's a great point, about rafts and those inflatable park structures and slides and slalom courses and docks. Those are all can be subject to the Act, and they do require our approval. Placing those things in the water without our approval it's considered to be an unlawful work, and we sort of deal with those on a complaint basis. But to educate yourself, I would recommend going to visit our website or contacting us. That email that's on the screen there right now. We have officers who monitor that email every day, and we answer general questions about people wondering if they have to apply and they want to place something in the water, and we help people do that. And I think getting in contact us is the first step if you want to place something in the water, or you're not sure if your dock or your raft or your slide meets the requirements. Just get in touch with us. A lot of the time, people are quite surprised that they do have to apply to us. We do approvals for that stuff all of the time, so it's not necessarily that we're not going to approve it, but it is subject to the Act and it does require our approval. So I encourage you to get in touch with us. And the Office of Boating Safety information for Dawn's group is there as well. And thank you to the Safe and Quiet Lakes for inviting us here. This is really fun. And I hope to hear from anybody who's got questions.
That's great. Thank you very much, Courtney, and thank you, Dawn. There is a question in the chat about sources for the buoys, and if you could provide an answer in the chat, that would be great. I do have a general question for you, Courtney, and it's about the complexity. Listening to your presentation, that sounds pretty straightforward. The rules seem pretty simple, but that's not what I hear when you're asking people informally. They say it's way too complicated to deal with. How are you addressing that concern that people have that going to Transport Canada is going to be complicated and difficult?
I think two answers to that question. So the first question is, I strongly encourage, I think the biggest issue people have is just getting a hold of the right department. It's confusing. I think, you know, Dawn's group deals with one thing and our group deals with another thing. And so I think just getting a hold of the right email address. And if you want to talk about buoys, we are your department. That email address that's listed on the slide there, we monitor it every single day. So I strongly encourage people to reach out to us if they've got questions about buoys. I think the other concern that people have, and I will address it in the chat, is where to find a compliant buoy. So the issue is that there's so many non-compliant buoys out there and that are sold, and we do not, you know, if people want to sell a non-compliant buoy, we do not regulate that. Where to find a compliant buoy. So we do not endorse any of the companies, but we have a little bit of a list where we found that people are selling compliant buoys. So I will share that. And I do encourage people to reach out to ask us for the list. This has been something we've been building for a little bit of time. So I'm excited that we actually have something that we can share with the public.
That's terrific. Okay, well, thank you very much to both Dawn and Courtney for spending time with us. And again, please ask questions in the chat. Courtney and Dawn, I think you're able to stay on for the balance of the program and continue to answer those questions. So thank you, Transport Canada. You're always welcome at these sessions and a great partner for us. Okay, we're going to move into the breakout sessions now, and the purpose is to have some small group conversations. There are 3 questions that folks will be able to discuss. There's a facilitator who's assigned to each group, and you can have a conversation about what order to talk about things in, etc. Please appoint a note taker and take full notes. We'll share those, a summary as part of the meeting. We will not be able to have everyone do a full report out. Instead, please identify a spokesperson from your group who will share one idea, one insight, the one that they feel will be most impactful, and we'll share those in what will be a quite brief debrief session after the breakout. In terms of logistics, Lauren is going to steer us here, and in a moment, everybody will see a note on your screen indicating that the host, that's Lauren, will invite you to a breakout. Say yes, you'll be transported magically into that breakout group where you can have your conversations. At the end of the breakout time, Lauren again will send a note, and it will indicate on your screen that you have 30 or 60 seconds remaining in the breakout session, and then we will all be re-merged into this group. That'll take a minute or so. If there are any technical problems, folks have, the facilitators have Lauren's contact information, or she's available by email at lauren@safequiet.ca. So, Lauren?
Okay, we'll start the groups. Good.
Welcome, Group 5.
It was mostly Dave Moffat answering questions.
I was saying, you know when your session's almost over when you see Greg's face pop in your breakout group.
Yeah.
All right, Lauren, let me know when you think we've got, well, it looks like we've got 3 screens of folks, so I think we've got everyone back from the breakout sessions. That's great. Good to see everyone. I managed to pop in to hear the discussions, and there was lots of energy out there. We're going to go around, and I'll ask a representative from each group to make one comment, the one idea that they'd like to put in front of the group. And then before we close, we've got a couple of poll questions that we will pop up as well. So let's dive right into the debrief. And Colleen, I'll start with group 5, and you had the stand-up routine by Dave Moffat. I'm sure that was a highlight, but what else would you like to share with the group?
Sure. Yes, thank you, Group 5. We had people from different areas of the province and different issues, but all one big thing that smaller lake associations and other regions are looking for: affordable, effective signage, that if we could all pull together and buy in bulk, that we can help each other, and everyone is struggling with the education on wakes and speeds. It seems to be a real common issue. Another quick one that we learned from Dave Moffat, since we were lucky to have him in our group, people were asking, you know, how do you ticket? Why you need the vehicle registration? We don't seem to see them as much anymore. But registration of your pleasure craft is free on the Transport Canada site, and it is the law. So that was something that I learned that I thought I would share with everyone from Group 5.
All right, that's great. So free is good, as the saying goes. So that's great. Thanks for that. Next up, Barb Bridgman. I can't remember which group you are with, but Barb, who's going to speak for your group?
Well, I guess I took the notes, so I guess it'll be me. We were group 4. So in terms of safety, if I could do 2 things, licensing for all of us is, I think the quote was a joke, particularly because renters don't have to be licensed, and out of province people or out of country people don't have to be licensed. So if we're looking at safety concerns, but the conversation mostly went around wakes from surfing boats, and it's a huge issue, and it's awful for the environment, and it's unsafe for young kids swimming and swimmers. So that was our other part that we really those were our 2 main focuses in this.
Barb, were there any ideas about wakes that people particularly had, or best practices that they wanted to highlight for folks?
I don't think we got that far, but certainly, my humble opinion, in the smaller lakes, it's a terrible issue, as Ann McDermott said, because they reverberate off the shore and come back again. So to me, it would be on the larger lakes, you have surfing areas out in the middle, and that would be one of my suggestions, but we didn't quite get that far, Greg.
Great. Well, one of the ideas that we have heard recently is the idea of a map for a larger lake that shows the area that is an adequate amount away from shore, that it would be safe for people on shore for those boats to operate. Okay, Craig, I think Group 2, I believe you're the representative.
Sorry, Greg, are you speaking to me, Craig Reith? If so, it's Rob.
No, it was me. It was me.
Sorry, Craig Hamilton, Group 2. Rob, I think you're in Group 4. Is that right, Nancy? I believe Craig Hamilton? But Craig is being shy, so let's go to Rob in Group 4.
Sorry about that. I thought I was unmuted. My apologies.
No.
I was asked to comment here. We decided to talk about the safety issue, definitely readdressing the PCLC program. So that's one area where I think when it was first established, it might have had some teeth, but it didn't seem to continue. So I think that has to be a complete discussion to readdress. Also changing the laws on, boat rentals and not having to have any sort of license for that. But I think the practical side of testing, that is a huge discussion. We spent quite a bit of time discussing how do you even begin to do practical testing? Is it grandfathered in? Is it on the student's boat? Is it on a boat provided? Where do you do the testing? What's the examiner qualifications? What's the parameters of the testing? Is this docking, close quarters? Is it open water? Is there a provincial or a federal database that records all of this? So this is a huge discussion, and with only 4 or 5 months of a boating season, it complicates things.
Craig, in your discussion, did you talk about where that conversation should take place? Because you just described a lot of elements, and is that through CMAC or one of the other national platforms? What were your thoughts?
I think CMAC is probably a really good place to start. All of the cottage associations feel the same way as this one does about the hazards of wakes and poor boater training or lack of. But ultimately, we have to get this onto a national level, and we need those people in the room to make this discussion really fruitful.
Yeah, it does sound like CMAC might be the place. And for those unfamiliar, Craig, do you know what those initials stand for?
I can't remember.
All right.
You put
Okay.
me on
Well,
the spot there.
I'm going to guess Canadian Marine Advisory Council, and if I'm wrong, I'm sure I'll see shaking heads. Since I don't,
I'm
going to go
sure
with that.
somebody knows.
All right, CMAC it is. Scott Young, I'm not sure who the representative is going to be from your group, and Rob, we will get to your group in a moment. Scott?
Yeah, I'll just quickly summarize. I guess if I had to kind of blend it all into one point, I would say that I think our group all agreed, everybody that spoke, and we had good participation from a wide group of people within the group. Everybody agreed that Safe Quiet Lakes pretty much has the prescription with the speed, the wakes, and the noise. So it just continuing down that road, pretty much everybody agreed with. I think there was a feeling that licensing, operator licensing is important, but it really needs to be the end product of education. And I think the education, it's important to note, needs to be sort of implemented through organizations like Safe Quiet Lakes, but through grassroots organizations like the lake associations. There's lots of comments on signage and enforcement and things like that. But I think there's an overall agreement that probably a lot more education, Safe Quiet's on the right track. Just keep it up and keep moving in the right direction. One thing I'll mention that I hadn't heard.
Scott, you just lost your audio there. That was a classic cliffhanger. One thing that you haven't heard, and Scott is now frozen.
All right.
So, Rob, from your group, we'll get back to Scott before we close. Rob?
Thanks, Greg. Our group dealt mainly with question number 1, what's the biggest safety issues on the lake? Clearly, the biggest issues are 3 things that we're already working on: wake, speed, and noise. We did have representation from central BC in the Shuswap area. Gary Milne was there. They have had 6 fatalities on their lake, often related to noise. There were some other attributes related to that. There was a feeling that we could go deeper and broader, and others Safe Quiet Lakes do more of what we're doing, which we've just heard, but perhaps broaden our horizons beyond the Muskoka Lakes, because it's an issue far beyond, it's a shared issue across Canada, frankly. And another subset of that was, how do we improve our messaging? We we are often preaching to the converted, which are on this call, and we need to expand our messaging and figure out how to get to not just perhaps younger people might be one categorization, but the other one is how do you get to visitors, which there's another theme there. And not part of our 1 point, but we did get into a very interesting discussion about fire pumps and emergency responses in areas that are somewhat remote. So that will show up in our notes. So that was our group, and thank you very much.
Well, thank you, Rob. And I'm not sure, Scott, if you're back. Yeah, you're not on my first screen. Let us know, though, if you do come back. Shout out to Terry Reese, who put not only the Canadian Marine Advisory Council, but the link to it in the chat, and some other ideas being floated there in the chat. Have we covered every group? I think that's 6.
Oh, you forgot me.
Nancy, my bad. Over to you.
Okay, thank you. Dawn actually is our, Dawn Senzik is going to speak on our behalf. Dawn?
You have to unmute, Dawn.
Sorry, here I am. Okay, just going through because I'm looking at the time. We have 3 minutes left. Speed, wake, reckless behaviors, and education on all fronts. That was a big thing. Knowing that we're going to have more police enforcement is awesome. That's what we need. Bow down, slow down is not something that we talked about, but I know that's something that we actually as an association have been talking about. And distracted boating. That's just a summary.
Yeah, great ideas there. And bow down, slow down. That's a good reminder and something that we have stolen cheerfully and adopted at Safe Quiet Lakes. Thank you, Craig. Lauren, you had a couple of polling questions that you wanted to put up. Let's do that now. You said 2 minutes, and we have 2 minutes. So. Everybody, the poll is there. Do you feel that there has been an increase in boat traffic this year? Yes, no. So please pop your answer in there. The answers are coming in. And then the second question is, do you feel that more education is needed around boating safety, navigation rules, and etiquette? And we are banging the answers here. This is terrific. I'm seeing that we're overwhelming on the first answer. 86% saying yes, an increase in boat traffic this year. And the second question, Nikita Khrushchev would be very pleased with this sort of election result, 100% saying that yes, more education is required. So thank you for those responses. I want to say a couple of thank yous, and both of them go to Lauren. Thank you for setting this up and making the technology work. In the chat, a couple of people said thank you to me. I have nothing to do with this. I just show up. Lauren and the committee makes everything happen. We will follow up with a report and the information from the groups. Please feed those in to Lauren at safequiet.ca, and we will share the slides that everyone presented. We will also be asking you for your feedback on this meeting, different format this year, but always interested in how we can do this better. And thank you for your support and participation in Safe Quiet Lakes, and please be safe out there.
Greg, did we get group 7?
Group 7 didn't appear to have anybody in it when I went.
Diana.
Oh, my bad, Diana. Leave out the chair, why don't you? Okay,
yeah,
Diana.
Nice going. Well, very quickly, we spoke really the whole time about safety issues. A lot of really good points were made around education, enforcement, licensing. Some key things that came out was there's a lot of good things being done out there, but we should collaborate more. We should integrate more as opposed to everybody doing their own thing. Get the boaters where they are on the water and on land, and some ideas about marinas being a key point to contact them about safety and boaters codes and that sort of thing, and all sorts of community events where the boaters are when they're not on the water. And the last thing was for Safe Quiet Lakes, I think, to come up with kind of like a standard for rentals for in terms of safety, because right now it's sort of all over the map the way it is. So thank you, everyone. And we thank our sponsors and all of you for joining us today.
Thanks, everybody. Sorry, Diana.
Thanks, everyone.
Collaborate is the message.
Career limiting move, Greg.
All right. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Wonderful meeting.
Thanks, Bye, everyone. everyone. Great to meet you.
Bye, all.
Thanks, everybody.